In specific fulfillment of the prophecy in chapter 12, verses 9 and 10 of the book of Daniel, a prophecy which says in part, "These words will remain secret and sealed until the time of the end. The wicked will never understand. The wise will understand." A prophecy which the unwise, greedy, power-hungry, and bloodthirsty Christian religious authorities and their hundreds of millions of unwise, cowardly, unquestioning, and gullible followers think to a person can be safely and absolutely ignored and disregarded as having no meaning at all. The term "these words," however, referring very specifically to the knowledge revealed through both the vision of the Son of Man and the revelation of the resurrection, these recordings will, God willing, explain to an infinitesimally small degree the knowledge revealed through both of these revelations, as written and alluded to in the Revelation of John. These recordings are being made with the realization that the Revelation of John, in other words, the book sealed with 7 seals, can be accurately explained only, even in part, by someone who has received both the vision of the Son of Man and the revelation of the resurrection, but that, in an absolute and unconditional affirmation of the truth of chapter 5, verses 1 to 10, the revelation of John can be definitively, if not completely, explained only by one person. And given that Jesus taught the doctrine of resurrection as a doctrine of rebirth, what that means is that the revelation of John can be explained and must be explained only by someone who, in a previous life, was the person whom the Christians called Jesus. These recordings are being made in order that, after I die, there will be at least some historical record to demonstrate that the prophecy in chapter 12, verse 1 of the book of Daniel was fulfilled, Michael being the name on my birth certificate, to demonstrate that I was here, to demonstrate that I tried for more than 36 years to convey these revelations to thousands upon thousands of people who had no interest whatsoever in the truth, to people whose eyes were fixed firmly upon the sky or upon whether this or that idiot politician or religious authority was the Antichrist or the false prophet, who might or might not be doing something or another with regards to visiting Jerusalem or signing some kind of witless peace plan, or whose dead body might be raised from the dead, either with or without some kind of a wound in the head, rather than upon any serious understanding of the teaching of Jesus itself, to demonstrate that this teaching is not mine, but was revealed to me through revelation by the one who sent me, and that it was specifically the rejection of these revelations and the one who sent me, as well as the visions and quite specific prophecies I had received of the coming time of trouble prophesied by Daniel, which resulted in the bloodshed and horrors to come. But on a much more personal note, these recordings are also being made for, specifically, 7 women whom I have loved with all my heart. Women who are named by their first names in this life as well as in their previous lives on my Unsealing the Seven Seals webpage, 5 of whom are Christians till this day and who have chosen to believe the demonic doctrines of Paul rather than the truth that I have spoken or written to them directly from my heart. And it is the censorship of these truths by the media as well as the religious authorities that has prevented most of these women, whose precise whereabouts are now unknown to me, from even so much as reading my words anymore. I have already explained in some detail the knowledge revealed through the revelation of the memory of creation, the revelation of the consciousness of man at the moment of creation, that is, the non-dualistic observing consciousness created by and in the image of God, the revelation of the fall into the dualistic, self-created, rather than created by God, consciousness of the self and the thinker, and the revelation of the memories of previous lives. In my recordings on the reply of Jesus to the Sadducees, the 3 dimensions of consciousness, and the commentaries on the book of Daniel, the Thanksgiving hymns, the scroll of the War of the Sons of Light, and the Gospel of Thomas. But these recordings on the revelation of John will, God willing, focus more on the knowledge revealed through specifically the vision of the Son of Man, also referred to as the tree of life in Genesis, as the vision of knowledge in the Thanksgiving hymns of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and as both the Sidra tree and the night journey of Muhammad in the Quran. But before going on to an explanation of the revelation of John, there are just a few words I need to say to the Christian religious authorities and their followers. Christians are not followers of the teaching of Jesus, but rather followers of the metaphysical idolatry of Paul, whose demonic doctrine of vicarious atonement was specifically concocted by Paul to protect the Pharisaical Jewish priesthood against the truth about the doctrine of resurrection taught by Jesus, the doctrinal truth for which he was crucified in the first place. The not so unintended consequence of that demonic doctrine being to shift all responsibility for the crucifixion from the Jewish priesthood to the Jewish people. In other words, the Romans crucified the body of Jesus, followed by the Pharisee Paul, who crucified the teaching of Jesus, leading directly and inescapably to the extermination of thousands and then millions of Jews over hundreds upon hundreds of years of Christian anti-Semitism culminating in the Holocaust, as well as, for example, the genocide of tens of thousands of Albigensians for teaching precisely the same doctrine that Jesus taught. But it gets worse. In chapter 2, verse 9, and chapter 3, verse 9 of the Revelation of John, the Egyptian god of the dead, Pharisaical doctrine of the physical raising of the dead body from the grave is specifically referred to by the code words synagogue of Satan, which means that any Jew, any Christian, or any Muslim who believes in the Egyptian god of the dead, Pharisaical doctrine of the physical raising of a dead body from the grave, rather than that the doctrine of resurrection is a doctrine of rebirth, is very specifically, according to the revelations in the Revelation of John itself, a Satanist. To these Satanist Christian religious authorities and their Satanist Christian followers, then, there is nothing in these recordings which will be of any interest to you at all. You have already been ceaselessly entertained and seduced by doctrines of demons too vile and numerous even to list, much less go to the trouble of contradicting. And in any case, there are, conservatively speaking, some 11 gazillion explanations or interpretations of either the Revelation of John or this or that symbol or this or that verse from the Revelation of John by this or that idiot Christian religious authority or theologian, and apparently by every idiot Christian on the face of the earth with a computer and access to the internet as well. Orders of magnitude more entertaining and seductive and not nearly as offensive as the knowledge revealed through the vision of the Son of Man and the revelation of the resurrection. Explanations and interpretations which have been sold for at least millions of dollars to witless Christians ignoring both the words of Jesus about the necessity of the teaching being given freely, as well as the words in the Revelation of John itself, restricting absolutely any definitive explanation of the Revelation of John to only one person. Briefly then, the 7 churches in the Revelation of John correspond to the 7 principal ganglia of the sympathetic nervous system in Western medicine. That is, the nervous system responsible for the experiencing of the emotions. In chronological sequence, desire, anxiety, fear, envy, sorrow, indignation, and rage, the corresponding colors of which are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Emotions which are referred to as the 7 trumpets in especially chapters 8 and 9 of the Revelation of John, because of the intensely brassy sound that accompanies the vision of the Son of Man, certain fragments of which are represented in the Stargate sequence from 2001, A Space Odyssey. These 7 churches of the Revelation of John do not correspond precisely to the 7 chakras of Kundalini, for reasons much too complicated to explain in anything other than an oral teaching, one-on-one between a teacher and a student. But for those idiot Satanist Christian religious authorities and their idiot Satanist Christian followers who accuse me of teaching doctrines of demons merely because of the mention of the 7 chakras of Kundalini Yoga, the phrase, "what the Nicolaitans are doing" in chapter 2, verse 6, and the phrase, "what the Nicolaitans teach" in chapter 2, verse 15, are specific references to both the practices and the metaphysical, philosophical concepts of Kundalini Yoga, which are specifically repudiated in the Revelation of John. In other words, there is a very specific doctrinal reason why what the Nicolaitans are doing is included in the message to the first church, whereas what the Nicolaitans teach is included in the message to the third church, which is a result of the fact that all of the messages to the 7 churches address very specifically either the emotion which is experienced at that chakra, the dimension of consciousness, and or the psychological mechanisms of the fallen consciousness represented by that chakra, and or a specific doctrinal component of the fallen consciousness at that particular chakra. And this is where it becomes intensely complicated, inasmuch as there are parallel interactions between the 7 churches, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 seals. So, for those who have not already been entertained and seduced by 11 gazillion demonic explanations or interpretations of the 7 seals of the Revelation of John, concocted by, apparently, each and every Christo-Satanist religious authority and by each and every Christo-Satanist religionist with a computer and a YouTube channel, this is the knowledge of the 7 seals revealed through both the vision of the Son of Man and the revelation of the resurrection. The first seal, the rider on the white horse, represents the non-dualistic but two-dimensional flat-space observing consciousness created by and in the image of God, a third dimension of consciousness conveyed by both the vision of the Son of Man and the revelation of the resurrection. In detail, the white horse represents Isaac and the downward pointing triangle of the Star of David, which signifies the revelation of truth, whereas the rider on the white horse, carrying a bow, represents Ishmael in chapter 21, verse 20 of Genesis, and signifies the search for truth, which also includes scientific, philosophical, and political truth. In addition, David Bowman, the protagonist of 2001: A Space Odyssey, is a synchronicity with both Ishmael and the Bowman of the first seal, in which case the Stargate sequence from that movie is a very detailed representation, and I stress the word representation, of both certain visual and auditory aspects of the vision of the Son of Man, night journey of Muhammad, as well as the knowledge revealed through that vision. The dance by Michael Flatley, entitled Stolen Kiss, should be understood as the opening of the first seal in dance, in which the woman dressed in white and wearing a crown represents the feminine characterization of the vision of the Son of Man, referred to by Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew as the Queen of the South, and whose each and every movement has a particular significance in terms of the revelation of truth, whereas Michael Flatley in that dance represents the messenger of truth. The second seal, the swordsman on a red horse, represents the fallen, three-dimensional curved space, dualistic consciousness, not created by God, but originating in both fear and desire, the color red being the color of the dragon, which symbolizes the movement of self-reflection, and also pertaining to the beast of the sea, consciousness of the self, the sword held by the swordsman representing the flame of a flashing sword which guards the way to the tree of life, mentioned in chapter 3 of Genesis and signified by the opening of the 6th seal in the Revelation of John, also represented by the beheading of John the Baptist, who was the prophet Elijah raised from the dead. The dance by Michael Flatley, entitled Gypsy, or the Dance of the Woman in the Red Dress, should be understood as the opening of the second seal in dance, in which the 5 swimming motions at the early part of the dance represent the 10 horns, the word horn being understood in its acoustical rather than anatomical meaning, of both the dragon and the beast of the sea. The 5 movements of her right arm signifying the 5 principal masculine horns or phonetic tones, that is, the long phonetic tones A, E, I, O, and U, but not in temporal progression, and the 5 movements of her left arm signifying the 5 principal feminine horns or phonetic tones, that is, the short phonetic tones A, and I, not in temporal progression because of the alternation of long and short phonetic tones, both horizontally as well as vertically, of the 10 sephirot of the Kabbalist tree of life, also referred to in the Gospel of Matthew as the 10 bridesmaids awaiting the arrival of the bridegroom, also echoing the 10 horns of the 4th beast in chapter 7 of the book of Daniel, also referred to as the 5 trees in paradise in the Gospel of Thomas, and also cryptically referred to in the thanksgiving hymns of the Dead Sea Scrolls written by Jesus with the words, "Thou hast brought forth sounds according to their mysteries." The 3rd seal, the rider carrying scales and riding a black horse, represents the famine of truth, which is signified by and the consequence of the fallen, dualistic, self-created, beast of the earth consciousness of the thinker, also referred to in Surah 27, verse 82 of the Quran, as the beast from the earth, a consciousness which speaks with the voice of the dragon. In other words, the duality of thought originates in biological self-preservation, or the duality of fear and desire, which occurs at the level of neurological reflex as the basis of the movement of self-reflection, and extends in time and maintains the temporal continuity of the 3-dimensional curved spatiality of the self, with the color black signifying the absolute absence of the color white of revealed truth. And it is also at this point that it must be understood that much of the revelation of John consists of fractal prophecies which have more than one meaning, in which case the white horse can also be understood as representing the teaching of Jesus. The red horse can be understood as representing the teaching of Paul, and the black horse can be understood as the establishing of the doctrines of Pauline Christianity rather than the teaching of Jesus as the official religion of the empire, at which point any threat to the doctrines of Christianity, that is, any heresy, became simultaneously treasonous, the consequence of which, as manifested in the space-time reality, was such things as the slaughter of heretics and witches and the crusade against the Albigensians. With regards to the opening of the 3rd seal in dance, there are 2 dances, one representing the masculine perversion of revealed truth as manifested today in violence, terrorism, and warfare, and as represented in the dance of Michael Flatley entitled Dark Lord, Don Dorcha, and Warlords, and the feminine perversion of revealed truth, by which revealed truth is transformed into a slut when the duality of desire and fear is projected upon it, as represented in the last motion of the right arm of the woman in the red dress before the woman in the white dress removes her dress, representing the transformation of revealed truth into the slutty doctrines of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim theology, whose fundamental purpose is to entertain, to pleasure, and to seduce away from the truth, as represented in the Michael Flatley dance entitled Breakout.